was still living with us. And my daughter turned to be vegan. And at the same time, the son of my husband wanted to eat only red meat at home. And we had a habit to prepare our dinners together every evening. We didn't want to buy any ready-made food. We produced, did everything ourselves. And that you can imagine how difficult that was. One wanted just red meat and the other part of family only vegan food. So we solved that problem by preparing always vegan-based vegetarian food. But then we added red meat for him and maybe for my husband, for men, for men. But now, when he has moved away, the son of my husband, it has become much more simple. Now we all have more or less turned to be vegan, or we eat vegan or vegetarian food at least. Sometimes, in special cases, we might add some fish or some chicken into our dinners, but very seldom. So I have the feeling that we are living very, very healthy way and eating very healthy way. Only the bad thing is that our dinners are always late night in the European way. We eat usually at 8, 9 in the evening. So after this panel discussion, I go home and start preparing our dinner. Anyway, I think that it's one option, of course, and everyone have the right to do what they want and eat how they like. But I feel, was it you also who said that more important is how the food is produced? And for example, thinking about meat, it's very important that it's not produced in Chile or Argentina or somewhere, Japan, but it's local food, not or meaning by saying local food that it's produced in Finland. So it's those emissions, climate emissions are not, or air emissions are not so huge in those cases. And if you eat only a little bit meat, it can't destroy the whole system.
I also think that we talk a lot about vegan food, and that is, of course, really good option. And I think even more of us should become vegan. I'm not vegan myself, but I try to avoid meat products. But it's not just the vegan food that we are bringing from avocados from all over the country or globally, but the local food that is even more good for environment. So that is my opinion. Of course, the meat industry there is a lot of greenhouse gases from methane, and also it's unethical. And for example, what I was trying to say, I have mom brains. I have 6-month-old baby at home. I have been sleeping 2 hours. But let's say that more of us should be vegans, but I also realize that it's not possible for all of us. But local rather than global.
Thanks. Maybe I just add, because really good points from everyone. So maybe we should more think about the consuming than what we consume. As today we produce food for, I don't know, maybe twice or 3 times for more people in the world than what we have of the population of the world. And we still have millions of people suffering from hunger. So we should think that how could we waste the food less? Because every wasted food we have, whether it's vegan or whether it's meat, it's all the impact it has on the climate goes to waste. We waste what we actually produce for eating. And maybe we should go from a thinking. I take an example from the school life. We are talking about whether we should have 1 meal of vegetarian food a day, a week at schools. So maybe we should just change the thinking that it's probably maybe we would have 1 meat meal a week, and the other 4 would be. So we should just think that it's more common to have vegetarian-based diet than meat-based. So it's actually kind of like changing the thoughts in a way that it actually was not so long ago. And I was a child in the 80s. So eating meat was basically done on Sundays. So we have just changed in 30 years or so to this, that meat is actually our everyday diet, which is not even supposed to be. If we think the Finnish person eats over 1 kilo of red meat a week, and even the health regulations say that it should be maximum of 500 grams a week, and the Cancer Association say it should be 300 grams a week tops. So even changing our habits to face those realities, as you said, the health and so on, that would be a start. Because I don't believe in anything 100%. If we put it's a great vision, we would be all vegan, we would all eat away, but I think it would have more effect that we just changed our thoughts a little bit more. And I eat meat if somebody prepares it for me, so. But basically, because we all know that, okay, we don't eat so much meat, we like everybody goes to home and eat the steak. But anyway, at least we say here now. Yeah, but that's maybe conclusion.
Thank you. Okay. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so I was happy to hear from you, and I forgot to mention that what I would see as more important is to eat more local and more seasonal food. Like you said, that we fly in avocados all year round. Even though it's vegan, it doesn't mean that it's ethical or good for the environment. So like just trying to think more that what's actually for us here and how could we maybe use it more. Even if you would forage a little bit of food in the fall from the forests, that's already a big thing, or just freeze some food for the winter, and kind of think about it like this. I'm trying to kind of tie this back to what we can do, what every one of us can do here today. And also food waste that was mentioned earlier is also a really important thing. What I try to do in my own personal life is before I put anything in the bin, I try to think and ask myself, how can I reuse this? Can I reuse this for something else? Does it have to go to waste? For example, I rarely peel any vegetables, or kind of discard any pieces of vegetables. And the pieces I have to discard, I store them in my freezer, and when I have enough, I make vegetable stock myself out of that. And kind of after that, if I don't have our family dog with me, who would eat up the scraps that get left over, then I put it into our yard compost. So kind of then putting the nutrients back into the cycle. It's in my opinion, just taking more responsibility of it, that you should not feel anything when you throw food away. So kind of thinking about it, if you want to do something today, go through your fridge, and if there's something that's about to go bad, use it up or put it in the freezer and think of how to use it up later.
Thank you. Yes, that was a very nice addition to this topic. We have to move on, so let's go on now to transportation. Yes, next slide. Thank you. Let's come now to the tricky questions. Do we need cars? Yes, maybe Helen. Yes, Helen wants to start.
Right. Do we need cars? Who's we, and what do we use the cars for? And when we define those, it's easier to answer them. Obviously, no, we can't have this kind of traffic going around. It doesn't make sense. People are wasting their time in this picture, in the traffic jam. So many hours of human potential wasted. I mean, people study and do stuff in the cars, but still, I'd say there's more productive environments for us to be than in a traffic jam. great place to meditate though. But so, as of transportation, if these questions go in pairs, I guess, I'd say I'm going to take this previous point of view. Why do you need to travel? And if there's a reason for that, that's okay. I go to different conferences. I work with international companies, places, and we at least try to solve various kinds of problems. For example, we're cleaning a couple of mines, both in Germany and in high up in Lapland. I go there, so my impact tries to be more than what I ended up spending. So there's a concept by British professor Brian G. Norton called the ecological handprint. You all know the footprint, but I don't know who knows the handprint. Point of there is the social and the actual net outcome of your actions. And this requires kind of a change of paradigm, really. We are focusing on this sustainable things. If I ask you how's your relationship going, and you say it's sustaining, it's like it's not like exploding, or it's not beautiful, it's not super good, it's sustaining, and it's like just and barely lasting. And the point here is that with the ecological handprint paradigm too, is way behind that time when sustaining was enough, right? That trend left already like 15, 20 years ago, when sustaining was enough. Whereas now we're into doing those actions, and we should be doing way more, taking way more responsibility than just what we consume. I see these calculations between, okay, I travel this many miles and I plant a tree and it's equal. You should be planting 1,000 trees compared to that. That's not enough to sustain yourself. Point here with transportation, if you go and have a meeting, come from wherever to Tampere, where Jyväskylä were, and okay, you came with a car, you go to an audience and say, don't use car, and they end up not using cars. Was it okay to use the car in the first place to come here? I'd say yes. You made a huge impact. If you need to fly to Japan or wherever, do the same thing, that's necessary. It's important, and it has a bigger impact than what you created without, right? See my point? Okay. Who's we, and what do we need the cars for? If we're going to use them well, we need the cars. That's I think, same goes with the planes. You actually do need to fly somewhere, do it, but be sure that you made a bigger impact. Promise?
That was a philosopher talking. Very good. Human. Do we need cars? As I told you, I came here by car, but it is the biofuel car, so no emissions at all. It's really nice to have that, and I encourage all of you to also do the same choice if possible and if needed. We don't need cars in everyday life. As we heard Anna saying or telling, introducing herself, she told about the various situations when sometimes she has to use a car, and sometimes it's wiser to go by bike. And I also want to be a mixed user, or how would you say it? Sometimes I use my bicycle, sometimes I come to work by bus, and sometimes I must admit that more often I go by the fuel car. But anyway, I have used to do it while 4 years ago I had a big family of those 5 kids who were very actively having hobbies and so on, and I was driving to place A to place B. Maybe it's a bad habit still I have, but I try to get rid of it very actively. But in our city, I didn't explain to you exactly what we are doing in our city. Our city council has committed in a longer run long period it's committed to aiming resource wisdom, which means that they want to aim zero waste, zero emissions, and no overconsumption issues. And for that reason, we have also prepared a roadmap where are steps how we can reach those aims. And it's my duty to look after that this work goes on. And now also, for the second time, we have also city strategy, and one experience is wise use of resources. And in this context, we try to encourage and do many campaigns and many things to encourage our citizens to use more and more cycles and walking, and as well as using public transportation. We try to make them to be very attractive and easy for users to use. And that is our contribution, how we try to do this transition into more sustainable well-being.
I have been born in a little village in Reisjärvi. There is about 3,000 people, and I was studying here in Jyväskylä, so there was no any transportation from Reisjärvi to Jyväskylä, so only option for me was to get a ride from someone else. So that is really divided question. In big cities, you don't really need any cars because they usually have really good transportation. But for example, in northern Finland, there is not that much room for using any other than your own car. But for example, nowadays there's a lot of those community cars that are really, for example, JYY, and I don't know if Sato has also, that they are really good if you don't need your own car, but you need sometimes a car. So I think that kind of should be even more and more people are renting, not owning a car. So, but for example, in Reisjärvi, you really need a car if you want to go somewhere, even if it's not necessary to travel outside of Finland. There's really beautiful nature, but still you want to go somewhere else.
Yeah, good topics like what would we miss if we didn't have any cars? Well, I think we wouldn't have any farming, because who would bring any food out of the countryside or Reisjärvi somewhere there? So maybe we do need them, but what we need to think is how we use them, and that's, for example, what Pipsi said. And because what's the distance a Finnish person chooses a car as a transportation? What's the most common distance? It's 1 to 3 kilometers. So I want everyone to think if 1 to 3 kilometers is something you might be able to do in some other way than to choosing a car. So basically, in a big discussion, it's like when we are talking about whether we should to give up cars and just everybody starts cycling, we are forgetting the people who actually do need the cars and you need to go somewhere. And but what we need to do is just look at the situation what we are in and what our choices, what's the habits we are used to choosing a car, and then thinking whether we need our own car when we start thinking how we move from place to place. And then, for example, I've shared a car a few years back with my brother. There was no problem. We had shared weeks because I need a car at work sometimes, but it take a bit more time to go by cycle or by bus to do some work things around the central Finland. So we had an agreement. We used the cars in different weeks. So it worked really well, and now I'm starting to do the same thing when my brother is not living here anymore. So now I have my own car, but the big plan is maybe